I thank you so much on kind invitation to participate in the conference, and not only in the conference but also in the whole project. And this is my second year. I'm always very, very happy when I'm in Hungary and in Miskolc. So thank you once again, and I hope that this presentation will be short and acceptable, having in mind that this area is really, really huge, and it was not so easy to shape all these issues in one paper of 15 of pages or something like that. So just in short about our demographic situation in Croatia as some kind of introduction. So as you may see, we have something more than 3.8 million inhabitants according to census from 2021, and that is some kind of decrease for almost 10%. And if you see this population age distribution, we have almost 44% of inhabitants older than 50 years of age. So that is having in mind sustainability of pension insurance system, but also health insurance system, quite significant number, and I think quite dangerous pro futuro. Speaking about gender distribution, we have almost 52% of women and 48% of men. But having in mind other data relating to this gender distribution, in particular the fact that we have something about 60,000 of people without any kind of pension insurance, and most of them are women, it's quite easy to conclude that we are in a danger of feminization of poverty in the next decades. Of course, speaking about number of health insured persons, that is very, very significant thing in Croatian circumstances, because according to official data, we have more than 230,000 insurance beneficiaries more than inhabitants. That is, of course, connected with the fact that we have actually a significant population of Croats with Croatian citizenship in the Bosnia and Herzegovina. And beside that, we still have 170,000 people who left Croatia, who moved to another member states, mostly in Germany and Ireland. And they kept their position as health insured persons in Croatia. We, of course, introduced at the beginning of this year new legislation as some kind of way to try to deal with these problems, because we have, it's not just anecdote, it's true. We had situations that people are taking low budget flights from Ireland for long weekend. They use our medical system and health insurance system, generally speaking. They participate in some kind of leisure activities, and they return to their state of working. And of course, on all that on the coast of insured persons in Croatia. Speaking about number of pension insured persons, we have, as you may see, almost 1.7 million insured persons in the pension insurance system, and 1.2 million of beneficiaries of pension insurance system, which is quite close to the ratio of Serbia, as Professor Bojic said, because our ratio is 1 to 1.35. So 1.35 active persons, or better to say employed persons, are in charge for all pension insurance system transfer, as well as they are in charge, or better to say, they are participating in providing health insurance system and pension insurance system in Croatia, generally speaking, for a population of 3.8 million. Speaking about Croatia as a welfare state, of course, we have provisions of the Constitution, in particular a provision of Article 1 of the Constitution, which proclaims that Croatia is inter alia social state, and of course that social justice, which is elevated in Article 3 of the Constitution, is some kind of highest value of the constitutional order, and also some kind of foundations for interpretation of the Constitution itself. Of course, according to these two provisions from Article 57 and Article 58, Professor Ravnic, the one of the most influential persons dealing with legal theory or labor law theory in Croatia since the 70s of the last century, argues that according to these two provisions, Croatian social insurance system and generally speaking Croatian social law implies the rights of family members to social security and social insurance, and also implies that social security and health insurance are maybe the most important parts of, generally speaking, social law in Croatia, having in mind, of course, precise definitions in the Constitution and precise provisions of these two articles. Of course, from the dogmatic part, it's according to Professor Nikola Tintić from the late 60s of the last century, we can define our social, or better to say social security law, in objective and subjective sense. Of course, in all other legal disciplines, social law and social security are in some kind of different periods of history, social, political, and economic system, and they are of course based on different conditions, social relations, interests, possibilities, goals, and concepts. And Professor Tintić was the professor of labor and social security law at the Faculty of Law, University of Zagreb, since the end of the Second World War until I think the end of 70s or beginning of 80s. And I must say that he's, from my point of view, the best legal scholar and maybe best professor of law, having in mind the dogmatics, of course, because many of his definitions from that time, having in mind the fact that he was professor during the communist era, are almost completely the same like definitions, for example, of working time or some other provisions in EU law in particular. So he was quite open to comparative research, and generally speaking, he was a person with excellent knowledge of, I think, 5 languages, including, of course, English and French, which was very, very important thing in that time of comparative research and so on. So just to say something short about the compliance with European Social Charter. So we ratified European Social Charter in 2008. We ratified a version of the European Social Charter from 1961. And we are in a group of just 5 states at this moment who are still obliged to implement this first version of European Social Charter. And having in mind, of course, assessment of the committee, European Committee of Social Rights from 2021, having in mind this group 3 of labor rights, the committee deferred its conclusion regarding Article 11 of the Charter and requested inter alia additional information on maternity, mortality, and measures taken to reduce maternal deaths, as well as on the protection of health and access to healthcare of transgender persons. With regard to Article 11.3, the committee also requested additional information on the number of partially or fully closed institutions for persons with disabilities, in the context, of course, of deinstitutionalization, the number of beds in long-stay psychiatric hospitals, and of course the number of community-based services, personal assistance, access to services, including data on education and employment, and the number of people living in group housing, in particular small house types, family type homes, and so on, as well as the methods of financing and monitoring this community-based approach. Also, for the committee, it was quite significant information about the capacities for protection of children and youth from mental illnesses, and capacity of hospitals in Croatia for innumerable children in particular, and children with severe mental problems, because in Croatia we have just one hospital for mental problems of children, and capacities of that hospital in Zagreb are in danger, in particular having in mind the recent earthquake, and also the fact that the hospital is situated in very, very old building without some special part of green areas around the hospital, which is important in the process of therapy and healing, generally speaking. Of course, regarding pension insurance, our pension insurance system has undergone lots of reforms, but the most important part of reform was carried out from 1999 to 2002. And according to that, we have 3 pillars. The first pillar is based on so-called intergenerational solidarity and provides pensions for current pensioners, generally speaking. The second and the third pillars are some kind of pension insurance based on individual capitalized savings. And this first and second, the first and second pillars, are mandatory for all employees at this moment, of course, residing in Croatia, while the third pillar is some kind of elective and constitutes a voluntary pension insurance, which implies, of course, individual saving that receive states incentive funds, and it's managed mostly by privately owned pension companies. We had debates, that is not included in the paper, but I can add that. We had political debates about the position of this second pillar because of the financial situation in Croatia and some attempts of the government to change approach to this second pillar. But having in mind the constitutional provisions and having in mind that that is really and actually private property, the government withdrew that proposals to change the approach to the second pillar. And in this moment, for a current pension insured persons who are enjoying their pensions, of course, is that some kind of possibility to withdraw their funds from the second pillar and put it in the first pillar. But it is some kind of, as I said, current solution as a result of very, very intensive political debates in last 2 years. Having in mind accidental insurance, the situation is pretty the same like Professor Bojic said, because we don't have a social code in Croatia. That is maybe not so good solution, but of course codes, generally speaking, are not immanent to our legal tradition and our normative framework. So accidental insurance is a part actually of Mandatory Pension Insurance Act and Mandatory Health Insurance Act, and so the most of the rights are regulated through these 2 systems of healthcare and pension insurance system. For example, Mandatory Pension Insurance Act regulates inter alia the issues of right to vocational rehabilitation, bodily injured compensation, but also disability pensions and family pensions as a form of long-term care. And furthermore, it provides for the rights based on reduced work capacity, which residual work capacity, partial loss of work capacity, and even in the cases of total loss of work capacity. Speaking about long-term care, just in short, because in my paper there are just few sentences about long-term care, we have problems with strategic approaches to long-term care in general. There is a huge lack of community and home-based services, and of course long-term care is predominantly implemented to the social welfare system and to the other ministries, in particular Ministry of War Veterans, because they are a special category with special constitutional position. In Croatia, so there are a separate ministry dealing with the protection and social security benefits, pension insurance benefits of course, war veterans, having in mind, of course, specific position and the constitution. And that was also in some kind of topic of scientific debates and debates about, generally speaking, equality in the Croatian constitution. But as I said, that is a special constitutional category. And just for the end, I hope that I'm on time. We, of course, having in mind the provisions of the Constitution and the fact that almost 24% of GDP each year is dedicated to actually social protection in Croatia, we constitutionally definitely define social state in a practice as well. But of course, national situation in the same time suggests great difficulties to the health and pension system due to pronounced depopulation, aging of population as well, and the large number of emigrations from Croatia, as I said, in particular to EU member states, namely Ireland and Germany. And of course, in summary, it cannot be said that Croatia is not realizing that constitutional value and determination as a welfare state, but serious questions arise regarding the sustainability in the next decades, and in particular in the cases of a social security system, at least at the same level of rights for generations to come in the next decades. And that will be all. Thank you so much.